What are you doing? That's my passport!
Ma'am, this document is no longer valid. You're not boarding this flight.
You can't just destroy it! It's mine! You have no right!
Let's take a step back, ma'am. We can sort this out away from the counter.
It's everything I have! Please!
Your decision's
The
fine.
sound of flames crackling filled the airport terminal as hundreds of passengers watched a young black woman's passport turn to ash. The gate agent's smile was cold, triumphant. She had no idea she'd just committed career suicide. Because the woman standing before her, the one she'd just humiliated, degraded, and literally burned the documentation of, wasn't just another passenger. She was about to learn that some people you disrespect have the power to dismantle your entire world. This is the story of Maya Richardson and what happened when prejudice met power at 30,000 feet, or rather on the ground before takeoff.
Maya Richardson was 32 years old and had already accomplished what most aviation professionals only dreamed of. As the youngest chief inspector at the Federal Aviation Administration, she'd spent the last decade climbing through ranks that weren't built for people who looked like her. Her morning started at 4:30 a.m., a ritual of discipline that began with reviewing safety reports over black coffee before the sun rose over Arlington, Virginia. She'd learned early that excellence wasn't optional, it was survival. Growing up in Detroit, Maya had watched planes cut across the sky from her grandmother's backyard, metal birds carrying people to places she could only imagine. Her father worked 3 jobs after the automotive plant closed. Her mother cleaned houses in the suburbs, coming home with stories about families who barely acknowledged her existence. They'd saved every penny to put Maya through college, and she'd repaid that sacrifice with relentless dedication. MIT for aerospace engineering, a master's degree in aviation safety, 7 years as a field inspector before her promotion to chief inspector of the Northeast region. She'd investigated crashes, grounded faulty aircraft, and saved countless lives through her meticulous attention to detail. The aviation industry respected her work, even when some colleagues struggled to respect her presence. That Tuesday morning in November, Maya was scheduled for what should have been a routine flight. She was heading to Miami for an unannounced inspection of Coastal Airways maintenance facilities, the kind of surprise visit that kept airlines honest. Her briefcase contained documentation of previous violations, safety concerns flagged by whistleblowers, and the federal authority to ground an entire fleet if necessary. She dressed carefully that morning, a tailored navy blazer over a crisp white blouse, simple pearl earrings her grandmother had given her. Professional, polished, powerful. She'd learned that presentation mattered when you were constantly underestimated. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her FAA credentials were tucked securely in her leather portfolio alongside her passport. The drive to Newark Liberty International Airport was familiar. Maya had made this trip dozens of times, her government-issued sedan weaving through early morning traffic. She thought about the inspection ahead, mentally reviewing maintenance protocols and safety regulations. Coastal Airways had been cutting corners. She had the documentation to prove it. This visit would send a message that federal oversight wasn't a suggestion. She arrived at Terminal C with 90 minutes before her flight. Plenty of time. The terminal buzzed with the usual chaos. Families corralling children, business travelers speed-walking with rolling luggage, the constant drone of announcements echoing through the cavernous space. Maya joined the line at the Coastal Airways check-in counter, her boarding pass already loaded on her phone. First class, as was standard for federal officials on duty travel. The gate agent who would change everything was already there. Sarah Mitchell had worked for Coastal Airways for 6 years. She stood behind the counter in her pressed uniform, her blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her smile practiced and professional. At least it appeared professional, but there was something in her eyes, a hardness that came from years of resentment she didn't fully understand herself. The kind of bitterness that festers when you feel the world owes you more than you've received. She'd watched the line grow, processing passengers with mechanical efficiency. Families, couples, solo travelers, all moving through her station like products on an assembly line. Then Maya stepped forward. "Good morning," Maya said, her voice warm despite the early hour. She placed her phone on the counter, the QR code of her boarding pass clearly visible. Sarah's eyes traveled from the phone to Maya's face. Something shifted. It was subtle, a barely perceptible tightening around her mouth, a flicker of something cold crossing her expression. She scanned the boarding pass without looking at Maya directly. "ID and passport, please?" Maya reached into her portfolio, pulling out her documents, her driver's license, her U.S. passport, with its distinctive navy cover, pages stamped from work trips to Canada, Mexico, and across the country. She placed them on the counter. Sarah picked up the passport slowly, too slowly. She opened it, stared at the photo page, then looked up at Maya with an expression that made something in Maya's stomach tighten. "Is there a problem?" Maya asked, maintaining her professional composure. Sarah didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked past Maya at the growing line behind her, at the other passengers waiting. Then she looked back at the passport, her finger tracing over Maya's photo as though searching for something. And Maya realized, with a sinking clarity, that this wasn't going to be a routine morning after all.
"This doesn't look right," Sarah said loudly, her voice carrying across the terminal space. Several passengers in line looked up. Maya felt their eyes on her. "I'm sorry?" Maya kept her voice level, professional. She'd been here before, not exactly here, but in moments like this. Moments when her credentials were questioned, when her presence required extra verification, when the assumption was, always, that something was wrong. "This passport," Sarah held it up, waving it slightly, "it looks fake." The word hung in the air like an accusation. Around them, the terminal's ambient noise seemed to dim. The businessman behind Maya shifted his briefcase. A mother pulled her daughter closer. Maya felt heat rising in her chest, but she maintained her composure. "I can assure you that passport is very real. It's been used for federal travel multiple times. You can verify it through—" "I've been doing this for 6 years," Sarah interrupted, her voice sharp. "I know a fake passport when I see one. The photo doesn't match. The paper quality seems off." She turned to a coworker at the adjacent counter. "Jennifer, come look at this." Jennifer, a younger agent with kind eyes, walked over reluctantly. She glanced at the passport, then at Maya, confusion crossing her face. "Sarah, it looks legitimate to me. The security features are all—" "I'm calling security," Sarah cut her off, reaching for her phone. "We have protocols for suspected document fraud." "Ma'am," Maya said, her patience beginning to fray, "I need you to listen carefully. That is a valid U.S. passport. I am a federal employee traveling on official business. If you have concerns, you can verify my credentials through the Federal Aviation Administration's—" "Federal employee," Sarah's laugh was sharp, mocking. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England." She looked at the growing crowd of passengers, as if inviting them to share in her skepticism. Some looked uncomfortable. Others stared openly at Maya, judgment already forming in their eyes. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she reached into her portfolio. "Here, these are my FAA credentials, my federal ID. You can call the—" I didn't look at the credentials. Instead, she picked up Maya's passport again, handling it roughly, flipping through pages as though the force of her inspection might reveal some hidden truth. "Where did you get this? Which country are you really from?" The question hit Maya like a slap. "I'm from Detroit. I was born in Henry Ford Hospital. That passport was issued by the U.S. Department of State. I am an American citizen, and I don't appreciate—" "Security is on their way," Sarah announced, speaking over Maya's words. "We'll let them sort this out." 2 airport security officers appeared within minutes, a heavy-set white man in his 50s and a younger Hispanic officer who looked distinctly uncomfortable with the situation. The older officer, whose name tag read Harris, approached the counter with the swagger of someone who enjoyed his authority. "What seems to be the problem?" Harris asked, directing his question to Sarah, not to Maya. "Suspected fraudulent passport," Sarah said, holding up Maya's document like evidence at a trial. "She's claiming to be a federal employee, but the passport looks fake, and frankly, her story doesn't add up." Harris turned to Maya for the first time. His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl, assessing, dismissing, categorizing. "Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us." "Maya, officer, there's been a misunderstanding. I am Chief Inspector Maya Richardson with the Federal Aviation Administration. That passport is legitimate. These are my federal credentials." She held out her ID case, the official seal of the FAA, clearly visible. Harris glanced at the credentials briefly, then looked at Sarah. "She got anything else? Driver's license? Other forms of ID?" "Just these," Sarah said dismissively. "Anyone can fake an ID. I've seen it before." "Anyone can fake an ID, but not anyone can fake federal credentials," Maya said, her voice rising slightly despite her efforts to stay calm. "If you would simply make a phone call to verify—" "Ma'am, you need to lower your voice," Harris said, his hand moving to his belt in what Maya recognized as a threat gesture. "Getting aggressive isn't going to help your situation." "I'm not being aggressive," Maya said through clenched teeth. "I'm being rational. This is racial profiling, and it's illegal." The word, racial, seemed to electrify the space. Sarah's face flushed red. "How dare you? This has nothing to do with race. This is about security. This is about keeping passengers safe from people who use fake documents to—" "To what?" Maya interrupted, her professional composure finally cracking. "Tell me, how many white passengers have you accused of having fake passports today?" The crowd around them had grown, passengers filming on their phones, others whispering to each other. Some faces showed sympathy, others stared openly at Maya, judgment already forming in their eyes. "That's enough," Harris said, moving closer to Maya. "You're causing a disturbance. You need to come with us for additional screening, or we will be forced to remove you from the airport." Maya's mind raced. She had a flight to catch, an inspection to conduct, but more than that, she had a principle to defend. "I want your supervisor," she said clearly, "and I want to file a formal complaint. This is discrimination, and it's being witnessed by dozens of people." Sarah's expression hardened into something ugly. She held Maya's passport in her hands, staring at it with what could only be described as contempt. Then, in a moment that would later be replayed thousands of times on social media, she did something unthinkable. She reached under the counter and pulled out a lighter. "If this passport is real," Sarah said coldly, "then it won't burn." Time seemed to slow. Maya watched in horror as Sarah flicked the lighter, the small flame dancing in the fluorescent airport lighting. "What are you doing?" Maya's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Proving a point," Sarah said, and she held the flame to the corner of Maya's passport. The navy cover began to smoke, then catch. Small flames licked at the pages, pages stamped with visas and entry marks, pages that represented Maya's citizenship, her identity, her right to move freely through the world. "Stop!" Maya lunged forward, but Harris grabbed her arm, pulling her back roughly. "Stay back," he ordered. The passport burned. Sarah held it away from her body as the flames consumed page after page. The smell of burning paper and plastic filled the air. Passengers gasped. Someone screamed. Phones captured every second. "You're destroying federal property," Maya said, tears streaming down her face now. Tears of rage, of humiliation, of disbelief. "I have every authority to destroy fraudulent documents," Sarah said calmly, dropping the burning passport into a metal trash can behind the counter, where it continued to smolder. "And now I'm pressing charges for attempting to use false identification to board an aircraft." The younger security officer looked sick. "Sarah, I really think we should call this in before—" "It's handled," Sarah snapped. Then she smiled at Maya, a victor's smile, cruel and satisfied. "You can collect your fake passport from the trash. Now please leave my counter before I have you arrested." Maya stood there, shaking, surrounded by strangers, her federal ID clutched in her hand, watching smoke rise from the trash can containing the ashes of her citizenship. And Sarah Mitchell had no idea that the person she'd just destroyed was about to destroy her entire world. But that revelation was still to come.
For exactly 7 seconds, Maya Richardson stood in stunned silence. The terminal sounds rushed back, announcements echoing, rolling luggage clattering, the distant beep of scanners. But all Maya could hear was the blood pounding in her ears and the crackle of her burning passport in the trash can. Then something inside her crystallized. The shock transformed into clarity. The humiliation hardened into resolve. She pulled out her phone. "Ma'am, put the phone down," Harris said, stepping closer. "You're not calling anyone until we've—" "I'm calling the Federal Aviation Administration's emergency line, and you're going to stand right there while I do it." She dialed. The line rang once, twice. Then, "FAA Emergency Response, this is Director Chen." "Director Chen, this is Chief Inspector Maya Richardson, badge number FA 2847. Her voice was steady now, anchored by the authority she'd earned through years of uncompromising work. "I'm at Newark Liberty International, Terminal C, Coastal Airways counter. I need immediate federal intervention. An airline employee has just destroyed my passport, a federal document, and I am being detained by airport security without cause." Sarah's face went from flushed to pale. "Wait, what?" "Chief Inspector Richardson," Director Chen's voice sharpened. "Are you safe? Do you need federal agents?" "I'm documenting everything. There are multiple witnesses. And yes, I need the Newark Port Authority Police and FAA enforcement officers here immediately. I also need the Coastal Airways corporate office notified that I am the inspector scheduled to conduct their maintenance facility audit, the one they don't know about yet." Jennifer, the other gate agent, audibly gasped, "Oh my God, Sarah!" "Shut up," Sarah hissed, but her hands were shaking now. "She's bluffing. This is some kind of—" Maya turned her phone around, showing her screen. On it was her official FAA profile, with complete her photo, title, and direct line to the administrator's office. "Does this look like a bluff?" The color drained completely from Sarah's face. "Officers," Maya continued, turning to Harris and his partner, "you've just witnessed and participated in the destruction of federal property and the racial profiling of a federal official. I recommend you step back and call your supervisor immediately, because this situation is about to escalate beyond your authority." Harris's swagger evaporated. We were just responding to a report of what? A black woman with legitimate credentials trying to board a plane?" Maya's voice rose, carrying across the terminal. The crowd pressed closer. At least 20 phones were recording now. "You grabbed me. You prevented me from stopping the destruction of my legal documentation. And you did it because she pointed at Sarah, racially profiled me, and you assumed she must be right." "Everyone calm down," Harris said weakly, but he'd already backed up several steps. Maya wasn't calm. She was volcanic. Every year of being questioned, doubted, and dismissed was pouring out. "Do you know what I do? I keep planes from falling out of the sky. I ground aircraft that aren't safe. I shut down maintenance facilities that cut corners. Yesterday, I reviewed Coastal Airways maintenance logs and found 17 violations of federal safety regulations. 17 ways your airline puts passengers at risk. I was coming to Miami to conduct an unannounced inspection that would likely have resulted in temporary suspension of your fleet." Sarah grabbed the edge of the counter as though she might fall. "I didn't. I was just doing my job. We have protocols for suspicious. Maya's voice cracked like thunder. "What was suspicious? My government-issued ID? My federal credentials? Or was it just my face? My skin? Tell me, Sarah Mitchell, because yes, I can see your name tag, exactly what made my valid passport look fake to you?" Sarah's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. "Do you know what the punishment is for destroying a U.S. passport? It's a federal crime. Up to 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. And that's just the criminal charge. The civil rights lawsuit? That's going to be separate. And Coastal Airways?" She looked directly at the security camera above the counter. "Your airline just racially profiled a federal inspector and destroyed her documents on camera in front of witnesses. I give your liability insurance about 10 minutes before they're in your CEO's office." The sound of rapid footsteps announced the arrival of Port Authority police, real police, with supervisors. Behind them, a woman in a Coastal Airways management uniform was running, her face stricken with panic. "Chief Inspector Richardson," the woman called out breathless. "I'm Amanda Foster, station manager. I just got the call from corporate. Oh God, what happened here?" Maya looked at Sarah, who was now crying silently, her career dissolving in real time. What happened is exactly what happens every day to people who don't have my credentials, my authority, or my ability to make this story national news. What happened is racism, pure and simple. The station manager looked at the metal trash can, at the curl of smoke still rising from it. "Someone get that passport. What's left of it. It's evidence now." And in that moment, surrounded by cameras and witnesses, with federal officers en route and a major airline's reputation crumbling, Maya Richardson proved that sometimes justice doesn't just get served. Sometimes it burns as hot as a passport in flames. Within 3 hours, Maya's story was everywhere. The video, captured by at least 11 different passengers, went viral. 20 million views in the first 24 hours. News outlets picked it up. FAA inspector's passport burned by airline employee in shocking display of racism. Civil rights organizations issued statements. Congressional representatives called for investigations. The hashtag Justice for Maya trended worldwide. But Maya didn't wait for public outrage to deliver consequences. By noon, the FAA's Enforcement Division had seized all maintenance records from Coastal Airways facilities. The surprise inspection Maya had planned became an emergency safety review. What they found was worse than she'd documented: falsified inspection reports, unauthorized replacement parts, mechanics working on expired certifications. Within 48 hours, the FAA grounded Coastal Airways' entire fleet pending compliance verification. The airline's stock dropped 37%. Sarah Mitchell was arrested at her home that same evening. Federal charges: destruction of government property, interfering with a federal official, and civil rights violations. Coastal Airways terminated her immediately and released a statement condemning her actions in the strongest possible terms. She faced trial 6 months later, resulting in a 2-year prison sentence, $100,000 in fines, and a lifetime ban from working in aviation. Security Officer Harris was suspended without pay, then quietly resigned before he could be formally terminated. The younger officer who'd questioned Sarah's judgment was commended for his attempt to de-escalate and received additional training to become the airport's civil rights compliance officer. Coastal Airways settled with Maya out of court for an undisclosed sum, rumored to be in the 8 figures, along with a formal apology read by their CEO at a press conference. The company implemented mandatory anti-bias training for all employees and established an independent review board to investigate discrimination complaints. But the impact rippled far beyond one airline or one incident. Maya used her settlement to establish the Richardson Foundation for Aviation Equity, providing scholarships for students of color pursuing careers in aerospace and aviation. She partnered with airlines across the country to overhaul their customer service training, incorporating real scenarios of racial bias and appropriate interventions. She testified before Congress about the intersection of racial profiling and transportation security, her voice steady as she described watching her passport burn. Lawmakers listened. New legislation was introduced protecting travelers from discriminatory practices and requiring federal oversight of airline complaint processes. 6 months after the incident, Maya returned to Newark Liberty International. She walked through Terminal C, the same terminal where she'd been humiliated, but this time as the keynote speaker for a travel industry conference on equity and inclusion. Hundreds of airline employees, TSA officers, and airport administrators filled the room. "I didn't choose to become the face of this movement," she told them, her voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. But I understand why my story resonated. Because for every person who saw that video and felt shocked, there are thousands who felt recognized, who said, "That's happened to me." Maybe not exactly like that. Maybe their passport wasn't burned, but they've been questioned, detained, humiliated, or dismissed because someone looked at their face and made assumptions about their legitimacy, their honesty, their right to occupy space. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, some uncomfortable, some nodding in recognition, all listening. Here's what I need you to understand. I was protected by my credentials, my position, my ability to make phone calls that get answered. But the vast majority of people experiencing discrimination don't have those protections. They suffer in silence, or they speak up and are punished for it, or they simply learn to make themselves smaller to avoid conflict. That's the real tragedy. Not just what happened to me, but what happens every single day to people who can't fight back. After her speech, a young black woman approached Maya, barely 20, wearing a flight attendant trainee uniform. Tears streamed down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "I almost quit this program last month. A passenger called me a racial slur, and my supervisor told me to develop thicker skin. But seeing what you did, it made me realize I belong here too." Maya embraced her. "You do belong here. Don't let anyone make you question that." These moments, these quiet exchanges away from cameras and headlines, reminded Maya why the struggle mattered. Not for vengeance, not even primarily for justice, but for the young woman in the trainee uniform. For every person who'd been made to feel like an intruder in their own country. For every child who needed to know that their dignity was worth fighting for. 2 years after the incident, Maya was promoted to Deputy Administrator of the FAA, the highest-ranking black woman in the agency's history. She kept the metal remnants of her burned passport in a small frame on her office desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that change costs something, that dignity must be defended, that silence in the face of injustice is itself a choice. The question isn't whether racism exists in our airports, our workplaces, our daily interactions. The video proved it does. The question is what we do when we witness it. Do we film and forget? Do we look away? Or do we recognize that every person's dignity is bound up with our own? That injustice anywhere truly is a threat to justice everywhere. Maya Richardson's passport burned, but from those ashes rose a movement, a foundation, and a reminder that our power isn't in avoiding conflict, but in refusing to accept indignity as the price of existence.